Okay, cool. I'll get started now. Welcome everyone to our third Figma class. Again, my name is Sanjana Venkat and I am co-instructor along with Dylan.
Hi, I'm Dylan. I'm also a co-instructor.
Awesome. So we're very happy to be here and help you learn Figma. First things first, I know that you guys have had a couple of questions about your certificate. If there's anyone in class today who's completely new, this is our third class, so if you just want an introduction to Figma or you want to go over the previous classes, all of that is in Discord. So I won't go too much into introductions, but how can you benefit with this class? So, one, you can learn Figma, which is a really important skill if you're pursuing a career as a UX designer or you just want to learn this tool. And we're also offering an incentive, which is a certificate to kind of show that you've attended these courses. There are a couple of requirements, and we did modify a little from last time. So I just want to review that real quick and answer any questions you guys might have. So first, we want you to attend or watch at least 5 workshops. So this question came up a lot if you're not able to attend, like the time clash. At least even if you watch and you show evidence on the Figma file that you're watching, following along, we'll be able to consider that for as part of the fulfilling the requirement for the certificate. So the key thing here is watching or attending, but just make sure that there's a space in the Figma file where we can see your name because we're going to take attendance or we're going to track all of that by looking at the Figma file, not just who's joined the Zoom and stuff, so that we can allow people to watch offline. Second thing, this is really easy if you just follow along the classes. So we've designed a prototype or a project in a way that by the end of the class, you will have a final fully functional project. So as long as you share that and you show your Figma skills, and you can personalize it and change it up as much as you want, but you show some evidence of the fact that you've learned things in our classes and you have some prototyping or variables or components, you have evidence of that, we'll be able to consider that as well. So these are the two main requirements. I will pause for any questions. You can leave them in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and ask as well.
And if anything comes up later, you can always leave a question on the Discord.
Yep. Okay. For the sake of time, I'll assume that it's pretty clear and I will go on. But again, you can leave questions and let us know. So, class schedule. As I mentioned, we've gone through 2 classes, and this is our third one. So, first class was an introduction into low fidelity. Then we did high fidelity, which is a more defined version of an actual mobile screen, what you would see in real life. Now we're making it even more real by making it functional and clickable so that when you share this with someone, they'll actually be able to click through each interaction and see things. So, this is a very exciting class. It's a skill that you will use throughout with Figma. So excited to get that started. Quick recap of last week. Last week, Dylan walked you through how to create high fidelity mockups. As he probably mentioned, we will use the term high fidelity and hi-fi kind of interchangeably. All it means is something like the screens you see on the right. It's just a very polished mockup of what your app or product would look like. And it's polished because you're using colors and textiles and you're actually using all these elements to make it look as real as possible. And we also introduced plugins, which was very helpful actually. And if you guys remember Iconify, that was one of the plugins you guys used to achieve some of these little water droplet book icon and all of that stuff. I've put a QR code here because every week we are posting recaps with the actual recording of the class, YouTube videos, and resources. So feel free to scan this. And if you're in the Discord, you should already be getting notifications for these recaps. So UX Club is helping us put these together. So these are very helpful recaps so you can keep being in touch with Figma. Now, these are some of the pretty designs from last week. So very happy to see all the work that you guys did, all the lovely, colorful designs, and we're gonna connect them today. So what is prototyping? Here is a quick summary. Okay. So quick summary, prototyping is just a simulation of the intended user experience. So How do you do it? We just use the mockups that you guys did in Figma last week, and we try to create the interactions and animations so that we can have like a good functional demo of how the product would work. So say that you're trying to share this with stakeholders, you're trying to share it with friends or professors or anyone, instead of dragging along your Figma file and showing them your designs, you can let them actually sit through and click through each of the interactions. So it's almost like they're holding the phone in their hand and seeing your designs live. So to get that realistic experience, we make prototypes. And how does it help? One, like I said, you can use it to share in presentations and sales pitch or share it with people. You can also give it to developers to give them an insight of intended interactions. And I see this pretty often, at least for me, the way that have been having to work so far is every project is done only when a prototype is done. Because when we hand it off to developers, we don't want them to have questions of like, oh, where's this supposed to go and all that stuff. So it's very helpful to make that connection between designer to developer. And it also can be used in user testing and research, which I think is where it's used most often. Because if you're trying to just test out a concept and you're trying to put it in front of a few people before you get it developed and before it's out in the market, it's really helpful to just make a prototype, give the customers or the users like a scenario situation, and they can just walk through and click, and you get really good insights about your product and research. So, what is a prototype? So we showed you guys this in the beginning of the first class, if you guys remember. This is the prototype that Dylan and I made that you will also be making by the end of these lessons, if it'll load the stalling time. I just skip.
Nice.
Yeah, okay, I'll skip.
All right.
Um, I'll show you guys today in class what a prototype actually is, okay? There's also another way to make prototypes just using paper. I haven't seen this much often, but yeah, whatever helps just to kind of show the interactions. I guess this is more of like a concept testing where they're just, seeing how people process information. They just have printouts, they put it through a mobile screen. So it's a kind of cute, simple way to do a prototype. And with that said, I will send the link to the Figma so we can get started.
Just sent it.
You sent it. Thank you.
And then there is a password on it, and it will just be Figma 24.
Thank you. Okay, so if you were here last class, I've copied your space. I've probably moved you around a little, so just find your space from last time. And if you weren't here last class, feel free to find a section and double click on the section name to change it and add your name.
And if you're having any trouble getting into the Figma file, just put a message in the chat, and I'll try to help you out.
I hope everyone has found their part. Again, if you need help, please feel free anytime. I think there's a couple of new people here claiming spaces. So if you need help, Dylan's always there in the chat to help. So I'll keep switching between look at the Zoom and look at your Figma. So hopefully that'll give you guys an orientation. First things first, you guys will see, I'm just gonna pop over to this as an example. You'll see these two screens that I've given you as an asset. All I want you to do is move your existing home screen to the right and drag these up top. That's all. So just take this screen and move it to the right. And to select a screen, just click on the name of the layer. So just click on it and the whole thing will be highlighted in blue. Just drag it up top and drag this up top as well. That's it. Easy. And make sure the order is like this because this is going to be the transition screen. See people moving. Once you've done that on your Figma, hop over to the Zoom. And if you're new, I've already set it up, so you don't have to worry. It's all in order. Okay, I will continue. So once you've done that, hop over to the Zoom and I'll just give you like a tutorial of how everything looks like. So this will just be me talking. Um, so as you see on the right-hand panel, we are currently in the design tab, but right next to it, there is this prototype tab. And if I click on it, it does a couple of things and has some settings. So that is the tab that we're going to use primarily today. If you notice when you're on the prototype tab, all these like plus icons will start popping up every time you select. This is how we actually create our interactions. I'm gonna okay. So this is what you should see in the prototype tab. So that is pretty much the prototype tab. The first row that you'll see there is the flow starting point. So in case you want to just test out and see what your prototype looks like, you can click on a frame and then just add a starting point and it'll do that for you. And this little mini player preview that you see, when you click on it, it opens the screen in a mini player, which will load in a second. And it'll actually show you how your prototype functions. And then right below it is the main part, the interaction. So this is where you actually add all the different interactions, and I'm going to walk you through that. And lastly, scroll behavior. We will see that in the bottom. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to reload my Figma because it's super slow. So the first thing that I want you to do is to just take this first screen, so now you can go on your Figma. So I'll be giving you instructions so you can follow along. So go over to your Figma, find the prototype tab, and if you zoom in into this frame, so my frame is called landing example, and when you zoom into the frame, you'll see these tiny plus icons. I want you to click on it and drag it to the next screen so it creates an arrow. So if you hop on the Zoom real quick, you'll see what I'm doing. There's this plus icon. You click on it and oh, uh, sorry, Supriya, we have a section in the bottom if you could do the interaction down here. So you can claim any of these spots. Okay, I will continue. So again, if you just zoom in into your Figma, click on your frame, which will make the whole frame blue. You'll see these plus interactions. So I want you to click on it and drag it to the right. Hopefully everyone has done that. That'll open this little mini window that says interaction. So I'm going to go over a couple of things here. So hop over to the Zoom and just watch how these interactions work. So first, the trigger is on tap, which just means when you're clicking. When you click on the actual on tap menu, you'll see all these different options. You can maybe like, what do you expect to happen when you're dragging, while you're hovering, pressing? Maybe when the user clicks on a certain keys, you want it to change. So for now, I'm just going to say on tap, it changes to that screen. Okay. And the action here is navigate to. So what we've done is when clicking on the screen, you want the interaction to navigate to this page. So that's what that means. And there's a couple of other options that we'll go through throughout the class. And the destination, it is already selected for you. So instead of having to manually pick the frame, it's telling you that when you click on landing example, it will navigate to home example, which is the next screen. So now go over to your Figma and make sure that you've created that interaction. And I'll give you guys a minute to see if you are able to do it. I think everyone's able to do it. Cool. Now, I want you to click on the frame, and if you haven't already, add a flow starting point here. So on your right-hand tab in the prototype section, you will see flow starting point. Click on the plus symbol, and it should automatically just add something and probably call it like flow 1, flow 2, whatever. Once you've done that, you'll see this mini player next to the flow 1 text. Click on it, and it should load a mobile screen. Hopefully it's loading. I think there's a lot of people on the file, so it might be a little slow. I'll try to open the. Okay, so come back to the Zoom. I'll show you how this interaction works. So on the Zoom, as you see, when I click on this, it changes to this. That's all the interaction is. When you want to go back to the first screen of the prototype, just tap R on your keyboard and you'll be able to go back. So again, just click and it changes. That's the first basic thing. So I want you guys to try that. Hopefully your minute player is working and it's not too slow. Um, Beyond that, there's no interactions on the screen, right? So it's just kind of sitting in that screen. We all have a good sense of how it works. So again, if you click R on your keyboard, that's for restart. It restarts the prototype. You tap on it and it'll change automatically. Any questions? No. Okay. So now, ideally, the user is not just going to be clicking anywhere on the screen and going to the next page, right? We want them to click on the login button. So that specific button has to take them to the next screen. So come back to the Zoom and I'm going to show you real quick how to do that. So I'm going to delete this interaction for now. So to delete interactions, you just click on the blue arrow and just click on backspace or delete on your keyboard and it's gone. So right now there's no interactions on this page. Then I'm going to double click on the login button. And again, I see these little plus icons. I'm going to take the plus icon and drag it to the next screen. Now I've linked that button to the next screen. So again, same logic. I want you guys to do that. Instead of the entire screen, let's connect the login button to the next screen. And I'll keep these settings open so you can kind of see how they should be. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Should be on tap, navigate to animation is instant. Be able to link buttons. Okay. So I'll assume that we were able to link the buttons. If you feel at any point that I'm going too fast or too slow, don't hesitate to let me know in the chat. I'm just trying to figure out the perfect pacing for people of different levels. So hop over to the Zoom and I want to show you all these different animations. So think of this as PowerPoint slides, like we have those like dissolve, those like all those transitions. That's what this is. So the animation, when you click on the menu, like I said, there's the dissolve. And my favorite one is smart animate. So I'll show you a good example of it later. But these are all the different possibilities. You can just click on all of them, play with it, see what it looks like. For example, if I do move in, here's how it looks like. So when the customer clicks login, it just slides in. If you like it, go for it. I personally like a good old dissolve for the screen. You can also change the direction that it moves in, the speed, the curve, all the stuff is pretty self-explanatory. But for now, I'm just going to do dissolve. So again, on your actual interaction, click on the blue arrow, it will become darker blue, and you can change the animation. And a quick thing to note, if you look at the right-hand panel, it's tracking all the interactions. So you can have multiple interactions in one button. So say that this is on tap, you can also, next to the interaction, click on the plus icon and you can add something else. Say that, when they click, you wanted to do this, but when they, do a different interaction, it just adds more layers to it. So if you want to just go and play with that and explore, it's something you can do in your own time. But yeah, just feel free to click through and see all the possible interactions. Okay, so back to what we're doing in the workshop. Now you should have your login screen linked to the home example screen, in my case. So we're going to move to the right, and in this home example screen, I want this little wave to animate all the way to the top on its own. So basically, when the customer clicks on login and comes here, I want this to go wee, and then I want it to change into the screen. So that's the interaction we're going for. So I'm going to select this layer, the home example. And again, I'm going to see the little plus icons, and I'm going to link it to the next screen, except this time, if you guys can hop over to the Zoom if you're not already, instead of on tap, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and select after delay. So once you select that, you'll see a little difference. Yeah, see, it already did the animation. So I'm going to change the animation to Smart Animate. So again, make sure it's set to after delay. There'll be a random timestamp, and the animation should be set to Smart Animate. So I'll give you a second to do it on your Figma. Okay. So let's take a look at this prototype from the beginning. So customers here, you see what happened there? So on my mobile viewer, you'll see when I'm not clicking on anything, it tells me where to click. That little blue highlight just tells me like, oh, the only clickable thing on this screen is login. So you click on login, goes here, and after delay, it did a little swoosh. So I am a little picky and I don't like the way that it did the swoosh. I want it to be a little more gentle. So we're going to change the animation style. So you can do this on your Figma. You don't have to follow along in Zoom. So go to your Figma. Once you've made that interaction, click on that little blue arrow with the dot. And under animation, you'll see Smart Animate. And under curve, you'll see Ease Out. I want you to click on that and look in the bottom and select Gentle. So select Gentle. And the first after delay trigger, I felt like it was kind of slow, right? It like took its time and then the wave came up. So I'm just going to change the delay from 800 milliseconds to like, let's just say like 10. Just want it to be pretty fast. Again, this is up to you. This is just my personal preference. If you like another animation, go for it. Let me show you a quick demo of what that looks like. So it just kind of bounces. I personally like this view. If you do, you can follow along with that or animate it however you want. So far, so good. Awesome. Moving along. As I mentioned, from this screen, I wanted to go straight to the next screen without me having to click on anything. There's nothing for me to click on after the wave has appeared, right? So hop over to the zoom and it's the same process. Honestly, it's you zoom in, you'll find the little plus icon, you drag it to the next screen, except this time you also click after delay. And I'm not gonna do like a So I'm not going to do like a curve here. I'm just going to do ease out. It doesn't have to be gentle. So I'm going to change my curve from gentle to ease out. And let's test it out. There you go. So if you see the similar interactions that I do, you are on the right track. I've also enabled Smart Animate here so that it doesn't look like, the elements are being added on top. Like that wave should already be there and just the icon and the high sanjana and all that stuff is being added right now. So that's the easy and fun part of prototyping. And now the most interesting one, or the one that you probably will need the most, is scrolling. So this one's a little tricky. I want you guys to probably go over to my screen. So if you see on your assets, the way I've set up my layers is a little more easier, and I'm not sure how exactly you guys built your own. So the homework for this class will be to go and replicate it on your own, but just for the sake of this class, use my screen that I provided to you so you can follow along because scrolling is a little tricky. So just go over to the screen in the bottom that I've provided and follow along for scrolling. So the first thing we're going to do is click on the home example screen, and on the right side panel, you'll see scroll behavior. Under that, you'll see overflow and you'll see vertical is already selected for me here. So if it isn't already, just make sure that under overflow, there's vertical. Click on that menu, you'll see all these different options. So say no scrolling or horizontal, both directions. I want to select vertical, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, what exactly does this mean? So remember when we talked about frames and the importance of keeping everything in your frame? This is where it really applies. So if you see on my Figma here, if I expand the screen, there's a lot of different content under this, but it's not going to scroll unless it's clipped, right? So basically the size of the frame has to be less than the content itself. There should be more content past this line. Like past here, there's a lot of different things going on. As you can see, there's like this whole layer of thing. But for the sake of the scroll, it has to be contained in this box because you want the scrolling only to happen here. So let me show you guys what that looks like in the prototype so you kind of understand. So if you see here, when I'm scrolling, this isn't built exactly properly, but it's going to the bottom of the screen, right? Because all the content, this little meditation guide, you don't see it, but it's there. So it has to be beyond the frame so that when you scroll in your actual frame, you'll be able to make that interaction. You'll be able to see that there's content below the fold. So is everyone able to do that and see it? If you're able to do it, that is good. You're already seeing it in the actual screen that I've created. That's good. You can try it on your own screen as well. So if you have your own screen that you want to try, again, the only thing is, for example, if I show you the student example, you need to make sure that the content is actually going past the screen. So here, I'm going to, on the right-hand panel, enable vertical scrolling. And since she has this kind of going below the fold, you'll be able to see it a little. See, it kind of like stops and shows that white border. So it's a little tricky. What I would kind of give you guys a tip is make the screen big and then make sure all your contents are overflowing correctly. So once you have done that adjustment and all the elements are good, then you can do that and fit it to the phone screen size. So you can see the phone. Like I like having this mini player on the side to kind of just make sure I'm doing everything right. And now you see the vertical scrolling is enabled on this one as well. Just a couple of tricky things. And then on your right-hand side in your design panel, there's an important feature here that is actually hiding this content in the bottom. So on the right-hand side, under this layout section, this thing called clip content is enabled, which means anything that goes past the frame is just being cut off so that you don't see it. If it helps you and you just want to be able to edit the information without, expanding your frame every single time, you can unclick it. And as you see, it's just showing me all the stuff that's beyond this frame, right? So all the stuff that's beyond the frame, it's still showing it to me just so I know what's there. But just to keep my things neat and organized, I like to enable the clip content so I don't see it and I know where the scrolling happens. So that's just a minor thing with clip content in the design panel. Any questions about vertical scrolling? I continue. Cool. Now we got scrolling done. I'm just going to fix mine as well here. So, okay, we made sure that I have that. So I have scrolling. It should scroll something like this. I have this extra white space. I don't know why. So let me just see. Maybe it's okay. I'll fix that later. But cool. This is kind of just a high level of how the scrolling would look like. Now, we're just going to add a modal, which is a pretty common experience in modal pop-up, different terminologies. So this is just going to come on top of the screen um, after like they select their goals. So let's just pretend that they've selected their goals. And we're going to go to the right-hand side on the prototype tab. And again, zoom in, find the little plus, and drag it to this overlay. So it should say congrats overlay. I think on y'all's sections too. And if you look over at my Zoom, I want to change the action that happens here. So we're not navigating to this overlay. Let me show you what that means. So if it were navigate, this is what it would look like. See, it's just going to that screen. And since this modal is not the size of the whole thing, we don't want this. We want this modal to appear right over the existing screen with like a background, right? You guys have seen those interactions. So in order to do that, we're going to change this action to open overlay. And there's a couple of settings that I want you guys to note. So the action is open overlay and the position can be centered. That's fine. There's also an option for you to manually position where it looks like. So when you click on the manual tab, you'll see this the overlay and you can just move it around like where you want it to be. So I want it to be over here, I can move it here. So manual is actually the one I use the most because sometimes it's hard to see where the overlay comes. Um, so you can either do centered or manual. And below that, you'll see that there's this background enabled. So there's like 25% of like this dark black background, which is something, like a um, something that covers the screen so that you're not distracted by the content of the screen, you're focusing on the overlay. So that's good. You can change that to like the opacity, you can change to 50, 25%. I'm just going to keep it 25. So I'll pause here so you guys can go ahead and do that on yours as well. So again, just zoom in, find the little plus, and in the action, change it to open overlay. And the position can be centered or manual. And there'll be this button that says close when clicking outside. You can enable that because usually when, you might not always click on the X, you just want to close it. That happens too. Um, and you'll see the background. I want you to enable that as well. And the interaction should be an after delay, not a on tap. So once they're on the screen after delay, you should be able to see the modal. So hopefully everyone is done. Now I'll just walk through the prototype again. Okay, from the beginning, we click on login. We have a cute little animation and it changes into that screen. And after a delay, it just says congratulations. So that should be your final interaction. And as you can see, there's that little background in the back, which is that 25% thing that we added, dimming screen. I forgot what exactly it's called. So that little background is 25%. Now that I'm looking at it, maybe I want to change it to 50%. So how do you make changes after you've implemented something? If you go to your Figma, you'll see that little button. And on the right-hand panel, when you click on it, it also opens the same thing. So you can do it both ways. You can click on the actual arrow, or you can click on the frame, and on the right side, you'll see that the settings open. I'm going to change this to like 50%. Yeah, it's a little darker. I like it like that. Now, lastly, how do I close this overlay? So Figma recently improved on this feature. So when I click on this little X icon, again, I have the plus, it shows you this close overlay option right away. So all you have to do is link it to the close overlay. There's another way to do this where you can link it back to the screen, but if you just let Figma close the overlay for you, it's much simpler as well. So again, click on the X arrow in the overlay and drag it out to this option where it says close overlay. So you see what happened there? If you do it multiple times, it might just add interactions and change. Like this one changed to on drag because on tap is already being used. So just be mindful of that. Sometimes you might be trying to do something, but there will be an existing interaction that you wouldn't know about, which will probably confuse you. So it's always good to check your right-hand panel to see a list of all your interactions. And if you accidentally create multiple interactions, you just click on the minus and that interaction is gone. So on tap, close overlay, and that is it for this part. So again, if I go back to my prototype, I just click on the X, it closes it out, and that's it. You can also click on the background and it should close it out because we enabled that setting as well. Cool. Um, so we actually ended pretty fast. I will also show a slightly complex concept, which is horizontal scrolling. So if you guys feel like you want to get into that, we have the rest of the class to do that. But if you have any questions about what I've shown you guys so far too, feel free to ask me before I get into that. Questions? Okay, no questions. Easy. This is my favorite class. Cool. So all of you guys should have this little asset on your section. So just click on it and I'll show you exactly how we set it up or Dylan actually will show you how to set it up in the auto layout class. So let's not focus on how we actually build it. So if you look in here, this entire frame, the clip content has been enabled. So on the right-hand panel in the design tab, so make sure you're back to the design tab now. Clip content is enabled, but just for a second, I'm gonna turn it off and show you all these different months that are expanding to, okay? So we have all these months, but I want the scrolling window to be just this much. That's the key aspect here. So this frame shows how much you want the scrolling to be. So if I made this frame all the way till the end of the month, sorry, let me move this out so you guys can see. So if I made this frame all the way to the end, then I go to my prototyping tab. You see under the scroll behavior overflow, it's telling you for the scrolling to work, the content needs to be bigger than the frame. So all these months have to go past the frame. So that's key for scrolling to be enabled. So again, I'm just going to go back to my design tab and I'm going to shrink the size of the frame. Now the content inside it is beyond the frame. So if you go to the prototype tab, scrolling will be enabled. Uh, so I'm gonna have to do a little small thing. So just click on the month selector, right click and select detach instance. You'll see that option. I already detached it, so I don't see it. But I want you guys to detach the instance. We'll explain the why that is later. So make sure you've detached it and make sure it has a blue outline and not a purple outline. Only then you can change the prototype. Hopefully everyone's done that. So again, you should have a blue outline, not a purple one. Cool. So now we've set the horizontal scrolling on the right-hand panel. It should say horizontal. The frame is, for me, it ends at like March. Maybe we can do like halfway up until April. That's fine. And if you see, whatever I'm doing, Figma is already like watching me and it's updated it into the mobile screen. So let's see if this interaction works. So I'm gonna drag and I can scroll through the months and I can scroll back as well. So that's kind of how horizontal scrolling works. And the reason we're doing this horizontal scrolling within the specific frame, if you guys can hop back to the Zoom, I'll show you real quick why that's important. So if you see here, I'm just going to put it on this tab real quick so you guys can see, just for funsies to show the concept. So I want the entire screen to have vertical scrolling, right? So that's happening, but I only want the months to have horizontal scrolling. So if I had enabled horizontal scrolling in this entire frame, so see this one should always say vertical, but only this specific one has horizontal scrolling. So that's important and you can have multiple different scrollings on one page. So you can have the whole page scroll, you can have a mini vertical scrolling somewhere. So we're gonna, maybe you want just this part to scroll. So then you would just make the vertical scrolling here, right? So on the right-hand tab, I would maybe say vertical scrolling here. I'll show you what that looks like. So if I make this frame smaller than the content and I do just vertical scrolling here, you see how there's lots of different things you can do. So this one is overlapping and there's some technical things to consider, but you can do like nested interactions like the page, the horizontal, the elements within it. So just a little teaser into all the possible scrolling you can do. That is it, actually, for today. You guys have any questions or anything you want me to go over specifically for prototyping? I can show you how to select the phone frame. So make sure you're not selecting anything on your Figma. And on the right-hand panel, you will see prototype settings. So again, if you're selecting a frame, you won't see this yet. You have to click on show prototype settings. But once you're in there, you can select the phone screen that you want. Maybe you want a MacBook if it's a desktop design. We chose this one because it matches the dimensions of the screen we're building, the 393 and 852. And yeah, you can just set up the phone screen how you want, the border of it, and all that stuff. So we have a mobile prototype of what the app should look like for the first few screens. And then stop sharing. Questions? Anything you want me to go over? Easy class? Cool. So if you guys want to stay back and ask anything, feel free to. For now, we'll just ask that you guys give us feedback for this class. Let me put up the QR code. So please give us feedback, and we're ending 15 minutes early, so have fun. And we'll also stay back if you have any additional questions or you want to work through any issues you faced prototyping.